Before we dive into today's episode, just a quick word from the sponsor CWD Pond. Whether or not you're building your new koi pond or you're upgrading your existing setup, these guys have got you covered with sleeper pond kits, pond windows, pressure pipe and all the essentials you need to build a pond. And for Koi Perspective podcast listeners, you can enjoy 5% off using the discount code TKPP5. Check them out, all the links are down in the description below. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, welcome back to the Koi Perspective podcast. I'm delighted to say my guest really doesn't need any introduction this week. He's been around the industry a lot longer than I have. How are you doing, Gary?
Yeah, I'm good, Joe. How you doing? You all right?
I'm good. I'm delighted to have you on. Probably our first dealer who's been in the country for a long time, so it's nice to have somebody on who's kind of been a staple of the industry for quite a long time. So thank you for coming on. I know that doing the techie stuff on your phone and stuff's not very easy, but I'm glad you've taken the time to do it. And how are you doing, Dave? You all right?
Yep, I'm good. Glad to be here. It's nice to be here with Gary. Gary is a fellow Millwall fan, so I'm happy. I'm not here for the whole time. Oh, Joe, Are you having problems?
No, I can hear you.
I saw you playing with your headphones then. I was like, oh. Normally it's me that cocks up the IT. But yeah, no, I thought I'd come and play referee between you two for the first 30 minutes. So we have to stick together, the Millwall fans.
You've been around the industry for quite a while. So it's good to have you on because these podcast type platforms for older dealers you sometimes can be a little bit daunting to making the first steps into like doing an interview on YouTube, that kind of stuff. So now I appreciate it. How's things with you been?
Well, good. I had a massively busy day today. Of all days, we've had a quiet week, and today all hell let loose. We started at 6 o'clock, bagging up fish at the annex, and every time I bagged one fish to put it in the car, bing, message, oh, is me Marahiro out of quarantine? Oh, could you bring it in? Bing, another one. And it's just been manic all day. I got back here. No, we got to the annex about 4:15, and another guy turned up to pick his fish up. So by the time I got back here, it was 5:30. I had to rush to try and pay me VAT bill. More messages. More, God, I've got. And then Sue said to me, Gary, it's 6:20. I said, oh, I'm going to have a quick shave and change my T-shirt. She says, you ain't got time. So I do apologise. There's a bit of stubble and there's probably a pond-soaked T-shirt on here somewhere. So I do apologise to your viewers.
You've got to work it, Gary. You've got to say you're rugged, sexy. That's the title.
Yeah, that's the look I was going for. Thanks. Yeah.
Did you just call Gatwick Gary sexy?
Yes, yeah. I suppose in koi it's like a low standard, and myself included in that. So
you're going to get loads of hate mail for that one.
Not more.
Well, we've had our fair share of controversy over the couple of days, and some things me and Gary I think are going to possibly disagree on tonight, but it's one of them things, isn't it? We've all got opinions in this hobby, and I think one of the main things is having a conversation, and it's not about like poo-pooing what somebody else is doing or putting down on what somebody else is doing. For me, it's all about trying to drive the industry and being like a voice. Well, I think for the hobbyist, I might not be everybody's cup of tea. But obviously,
and you think I am.
But no, we've had our fair share of discussions over the telephone about certain things we've discussed recently on the podcast and stuff. Obviously, you've been a dealer for quite a long time. How do you feel like the industry's changing more like over the last, say, 5 years with the rise of the internet, so to speak?
Well, I don't think it's been a rise in the internet. I think it's been a rise as in the amount of koi dealers. I mean, I'm good friends with Dave at Coastal Koi. And every day in the summer, we were sending, here's another one. There just seemed to be, maybe I've just taken notice of them being on Facebook a bit more, and there just seemed to be one every couple of days popping up. And I was like, wow, where are all these guys coming from? But don't get me wrong, I think it's good because if they're selling fish, it means there's, excuse me for me sparkling water, it means it's a healthy industry. If everyone's selling fish and there's room for more dealers, then a lot of us over the winter, wasn't the best winter, to be honest with you. The end of the last summer was pretty hard, but for most, I would say, including ourselves. So if we're all selling fish and new dealers are selling fish, then it's a positive step for the industry and the hobby, I feel.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. And I think that a lot of people, they kind of do... I kind of get the feeling that some dealers out there, that last year specifically was like feeling the pains of it was quiet last year, but then also I think that some dealers have kind of like really stepped up as well. There's been a lot of like good things happen over the last couple of years. We've got a lot of dealers from the UK visiting Japan nowadays, it's not like a bad shape for the industry to be in, but there's definitely like a lot of misinformation, a lot of like new experts to the industry that are probably. I can imagine it can be a bit like jarring if you've been around the block for quite a while to hear somebody new to the industry come on and pretend to know it all, Gary.
That's every trade, though, isn't it? Let's be honest. So I'm in civils, and we have what we call them the flavour of the month. They pop up, they don't last long, they disappear, and even in that industry, the construction industry, it is frustrating. Mm-hmm. But you kind of just have to embrace it, don't you? And the ones that stand the test of time, like there is a few across the country, several across the country, like yourself, Gary, that have gone through everything. Have gone through a recession, have gone through COVID. And are still here.
Well, COVID, you say go through COVID. My best 2 years were through COVID, ever. And not by some margin. I mean, I'm not going to go into personal details, but there was a target that we've never hit. We've been 10,000 short, 5,000 short, 37,000 short. This is figures I can remember because it's so frustrating. Mm-hmm. The one point during the COVID, we hit that target and then doubled it in one financial year. So COVID wasn't actually a big problem. For me it was, and I'm going to admit this, it's not the easiest thing to admit. We were flying high. Even though we had KHV in the middle of the COVID, we got through that. Financially, we were just starting to bounce back. But we were buying so many koi and selling so many koi. And then what happened was I don't want to blame the Labour government, but it was about the time of the general election. And when the kids broke up, it was like, bang, someone just switched the switch off. And I'm saying to Sue, 2:00, have we seen anyone today? No. This was around July time. And I started ringing some of the koi dealers and the moaning and the groaning. And, it was bad. The winter wasn't too bad, but normally we sell a lot of fish during the autumn harvest. We sell a lot of fish during the winter. And we have sold a lot, but the traffic through the shop's still been slow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I personally think as well, like a big thing with COVID was a lot of people my age, the only thing that was open during COVID was garden centres. I think I've said this a couple of times on the podcast. So for me...
I don't think garden centres were allowed to open, were they?
Well, that's how I got into it, because basically, like, I'd gone to go get some, like, paint for my fencing, and there was, like, a little garden centre koi shop, and that's how I got into koi. Through the garden centre during lockdown. So, like, if it weren't for COVID, I wouldn't have got into it. I do wonder, I mean, Japanese stuff is more fashionable nowadays. You talk about, like, fashion, furniture, house design, gardening, Japanese is, K-pop. You've got, like, bonsai is also quite fashionable now. So Japanese gardening, if you put koi under that bracket, I think it has been a bit of a boom, and I think also for younger people as well, like it is trendy to own koi now. I think. So I think there's a lot of people that are like my age or maybe in mid-30s, early 40s that are into the hobby now, and that kind of generation. I was saying they're like not the generation to maybe join a koi club. They're not at that older generation, whereas maybe they still go online to get information and things like that. And so it's kind of, I think, a bit of a changing dynamic where people are going online to get information. And
I think people during COVID as well, I think there's not many people that didn't enjoy the slowdown in life. The pace during COVID was fantastic, and a lot of that is the Japanese way as well, isn't it? I think a lot of people turn to that relaxing side of Japan. Whenever I think of relaxing, I think of bonsai, I think of tea houses. I think a lot of people, like you say, almost become a bit fashionable, a bit like yoga and Pilates, the Japanese way.
Yeah.
And our man in Japan with James May was on during COVID as well. I think that helped. Because that was a brilliant series.
I don't really remember watching that. But just to pick up on what you said about, there does seem to be an influx now of younger people. But the only problem is I see with that as a problem, or the only problem that we can't seem to get an answer for, is they don't seem to be joining koi clubs. I mean, I've always been a member of the Worthing Koi Club, and I think, I can't say because I haven't been to a meeting for a year or so. I can honestly say I think I was the youngest person in the club at 6 feet.
I didn't know Worthing had a koi club.
Youngest person.
Yeah. I think it's kind of, it's difficult because the older generation of people want to do things perhaps like that are not differently. I think like the people go and visit koi ponds and things like that. The older generation, I think the younger generation are more wanting to go out and visit dealers or go out and see like they'll wait to go to a koi show rather than go to visit someone else's pond, because a lot of the ponds that are built nowadays don't have a lot of like individuality about them. A lot of them are block built fiberglass rectangles with maybe a glass window in.
Oi.
Well, it's mine. That's my pond, and that's Dave's pond as well.
But
so maybe like
it seems to be 99% of all the ponds built now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it's kind of controversial, Joe, just to get us into even more trouble.
Gosh.
I think some of the koi clubs have really got to change.
I do agree with you. I do agree with you. I'll tell you a funny incident with a koi club, and it was brilliant. I think you've got to diversify, and I told the chairman this, and he said, "Oh, you're going to come down next Sunday then?" I said, "Why is that?" He said, "We've got a policeman coming in to do a talk, policing in Sussex throughout the ages." And I thought, do you know what? Like this podcast, don't really fancy that, but I said get something different, right? So I went. I'll tell you what, it's the best day I've had at a koi club. We were laughing, and he was brilliant. He dressed up one young man he's not in the club now. He's moved to Cornwall. I think he dressed him up as either a policeman or a robber. But in the introduction, he went round and because he's retired, he's been I think a Worthing policeman for years, and he went round the room to two people sitting next to me, and he went, "I know you. Your dad was the baker." He said, "Yeah, that's right." He said, "I remember you growing up." He said, "And I remember you, and I remember you got into a little bit of trouble." And he got to me, and he said, "I don't know you." And he went on to the next person. Then he come back, and he went, "But you look like I should do." And he had us in hysterics for an hour. And I just think, all right, someone might say, but that's not about koi. But I think a lot of the clubs sometimes are more about the social side than the club.
Yeah, definitely.
Than the koi sometimes. So I think you're right, Dave. They have got to diversify, and that was brilliant. But they never did it again.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as well, like perhaps YouTube as hobbyists have some portion of blame to deal with for the koi clubs, because it's so easy for me to jump online and Google koi pond and go and watch one of Dave's videos or one of Simon's videos or any hobbyist videos and see what they're doing with the ponds on YouTube. So like, then do I need to go and visit 10 different ponds in person if I can go on YouTube and watch, like we've seen new parasite treatments recently? I don't need to go to my koi club to find out if that parasite treatment's working. I can go on YouTube and find like an independent reviewer of it.
Problem with that is, and I'll say this carefully because I have, my YouTube channel follows our journey, and that is from getting into koi and making lots and lots of mistakes. Problem we've got is we've got lots of youngsters coming in, watching YouTube and assuming what they're seeing on YouTube is correct.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Dave. I am really
true, isn't
glad
it?
you
I'm
said
not
it.
going to sit here and
I've
hide
seen
it.
a horrendous video. I didn't even watch it. I was told the content of it and I refused to watch it, about potassium dipping koi as they come in from a dealer, or one person said from a shipment of koi. And I was like, Jesus, do you know what? Potassium, right? I know we've used it for years and years, but it's nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Not only does it strip the mucus, I'm trying to remember what Paula Reynolds told me, but it affects the mucus gland a little, that it actually slows down production or prevents production of mucus for a little while. So you've got all these people that used to show and potassium stripping the mucus, which you want for the light to get through to the colours. I get all of that. But then you go to, and let's face it, stress. I've got no problem with shows, so I don't want loads of people ringing up saying, "Oh, you stop it." It is a little bit stressful for the fish. You can't deny that. So the last thing you want at a show is a fish without mucus and the ability to produce more because someone's potassium dipped, when there's so much more a light dose of chloramine tea or something like that. And that's one of the reasons that someone said, as a joke, you should start your own YouTube channel. But
which you've done very well with, I will say, Gary.
2 videos in 6 months.
No,
I don't think I'm going to get a big check from YouTube anytime.
It's not just that. You upload your videos of the koi and the vats as well, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
See, I enjoy it. That's what I most enjoy. See koi in a vat. That's perfect for me. So seeing that is, very good.
Well, that's half of the job now for me. Now is on the internet, buying the fish, getting them on the web, doing the auctions. I mean, there's another topic. Where do we want to start tonight? You could talk about auctions.
Well, yeah, my feeling is that auctions in the UK have gone like crazy. Like every dealer and his dog now are hosting like UK auctions, and I understand from some extent. Like I think there's very different. There can be two very different types of auction in this country. There can be auctions to get rid of fish that aren't sold and to sell them, you know, with no reserve. And then there's auctions where fish are sold to genuinely like try and upsell koi. I don't feel like there's very much in between where there's like it's either a dealer getting rid of end of year stock or it's this fish is the best thing since sliced bread.
Fire emoji.
And with loads of fire emojis and ninja emojis and
well, I can't do that, so I'm not guilty of that. I'm lucky if I can just watch a video on the internet.
But like,
I didn't actually mean auctions in England. I meant buying auctions from Japanese auctions.
Well,
but now
they're very different things, aren't they?
Yeah, but now you've mentioned the auctions, I think it makes it very easy for koi dealers to sell koi. It does drive the price down, but we'll come back onto that for another minute. But some dealers are quite jealous, really. I see some of the prices their fish go for, and they're not bigging them up as much as people are saying they are. You know, and if two people want to find it out for a fish, that's their own. There was a famous incident a couple of years ago where a fish from a very famous farm went for about £50,000 upwards, and it was only an 8-inch fish. Someone leaked it all onto the internet. There was a hoo-ha, and it just went ballistic. All the dealers, all the auctions, everyone to do with anything in Japan was going mad, and rightly so. It's private. It shouldn't be put on there. I don't care what anyone says about hiding the price. Two people buy a fish. Why do 500 million people around the world need to know the price of it?
Yeah.
I think it's actually very rude. But anyway, I diverge. Customer come in the shop and he said, "Did you see the price of that fish?" I said, "Oh, don't. My messages, my phone, it ain't stopped. It's mad." He said, how can one stupid person pay that price for fish?" I said, "He's not a stupid person." "Yes, he is." "No, he's not." "Yes, he is." I said, "Can I just stop you there? He's not a stupid person. There's two stupid persons, because he didn't run it up to 50 grand himself. There was two of them fighting over it, and there was probably 5 or 6 along the way."
Yeah.
Really, auctions. I mean, I got a message from my guy I do a lot of business with in Japan. He said, "I've just seen the most ridiculous thing at I won't say what auction, an auction. Two guys from Asia, I don't know what country, I don't want to be racially democratic, but he just said two Asians, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, bidding against each other and laughing." You've got to laugh, but it's not funny, really, because I will pick up a point. One of your guests last week said that all these new dealers are driving the price of better quality koi down. They ain't. Not even close. What they're doing is, a lot of them, not all of them, and I've got no problem with this, excuse me, they're all buying what we call console fish, which is 50 fish, certain amount in a box, 50 fish in a box, certain price, up comes the net, 49.50, right, they're in them, send them off to England. Now, before anyone says, "Oh, that's not true," I happen to know that England at the moment is shipping nearly more console fish in than the rest of the world put together. Now, I don't mean more fish. I just mean off what we call a stock list. Do you understand what I mean by that?
So they're not hand selected. Yeah.
No. Now, that doesn't mean they're all doing it, and it also doesn't mean it's wrong. And I'm just going to bring up another story. You're going to get loads of stories tonight. I'm a million miles an hour to get them all through. Last year, I was at a big company shipment into Japan before I stopped shipping for myself. These guys were running around with boxes on their shoulders and under their arms. And I said, "Guys, slow down." I said, "You're not going to have a back by the time you get to my age." "Oh, don't worry, Gary. They're not the 35 kilo boxes that your fish come in. These are all little toe side, 10 centimetre, not 10 inch, sorry, 10 centimetre toe side, 15 kilo boxes." I said, "Oh, well, that's all right. We don't sell that stuff. I just can't be bothered to sell that stuff." And a bloke behind me said, "Send them our way, Gary." And I looked round and there was a young man with a manager, you can probably guess, of a big aquatic centre. And I felt really bad, like I've been a bit snobbish, because I'm not that at all. And I said, "Listen, pal, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean anything by that." And his manager, who I know very well, and if you're watching this, Dave, you haven't popped in for a cup of coffee. You normally pop in once a year. So you can pop in, not since COVID. But anyway, he turned around and he said, "Don't apologise, Gary. I understand it's not," what did he say? "It's not your business model." He said, "I've been to your shop. Your phone don't stop ringing. You're always messaging on that. You're on auctions. Your missus is busy stocking the shop up." He said, "You don't have the time to be bagging up 10, 15, 20 quid tosai. It's not your business model. However, it is ours. We employ kids from school Saturdays and Sundays, and they'll just stick there, five of them in a bag, five of them in a bag, 5 of them, 2 of them." So I'm not knocking anybody or whatever you sell, it's not. It's all down to your business, what you want to do. If you want to sell cheap koi, I'm just saying that there's room for everybody. But when your friend said that it's driving the price of better fish down, it's actually not. Because all these, I'm just going to contradict myself now, because although a lot of console fish is coming in, there are people, a lot of new dealers, buying very good fish. And I know because we're supplying some of them. But, and this is the but, they've all got access to Narita #1's auction, Dainichi auction, Sakai auction, Momotaro auction, any auction they've all got. And they are all bidding and they are all buying. So what they're actually doing is they're pushing up the price to the point now where I really have to really concentrate. Before I was like, that much here, we'll have that, 30 fish from this auction, 10 fish from that auction. But now I have to really, really pick my battles. And I say to customers, I had a customer gave me a budget for a fish. I bought the fish for him. Next day he phoned up. He was over the moon because it was £100 under his budget. Phoned me up. He said, "You've got 3 fish on your site for £395 from the same auction that are better than mine." I said, "Well, you wanted that fish. You was prepared to pay that for it. So was somebody else, nearly. Whereas I wouldn't have been able to sell it at that. But you wanted it. And I did say to you, I get quite a lot of weight." So I'm just sort of saying as another example. But the new dealers in this country are actually putting the better price of the fish up.
Do you also feel like, Gary, because say if I wanted to start Joe Mitchell Koi Enterprises and decide to be a koi dealer myself and set myself up an account, like, because it is so easy now, and I'm not saying it's easy to select good fish or to know a good fish or whatever, does it almost like somewhat devalue it to the customer, the fact that, like, relationships in Japan, like, you will have been around when you go to Japan, you build your relationship with the breeder. Now it's kind of like everything goes, well, a lot goes through auction now. I'm not saying everything goes through auction, but does it devalue it? Because, like,
No,
it's not like a
no,
prestigious,
not
it's
at all.
not
The auction fish are such a small percentage of the fish shipped out.
yeah.
We shipped in 40 boxes the other day, 45 boxes from Nagata, and only 3 of them were auction boxes. Because you've also got to remember, if you're, and a few dealers got caught out, and I've heard some funny stories, but it's personal for them, so I can't put it on here, where they thought they could just, that someone didn't realise there was 2 Dainichi koi farms and was hit with a 30,000 yen bill to ship them up to Nagata to get them repacked. So that hurt him. Also, when you're bidding at Narita, you've got to be able to make a box up, and you've got to think really quick on your fish. The first thing is you've got to look at the farm. This fish is at Narita Koi Farm, so you've got to realise, right, I need to be able to buy enough to make a box up for that. This fish is at Issa Farm, so you get 6 fish, maybe 12 fish from Issa, all listings, and you think, well, I need 6 of these, and then you can get stuffed on the last fish, goes through the roof, and you have to just say, sod it, I'll swallow the extra fish, room in the box. And so there's a lot of pitfalls with auctions, and a lot of people get caught out. I mean, obviously, I've been doing it a long time in Japan, but I really do miss getting out to Japan. COVID stuffed us to go out to Japan, and then the next year, the paperwork was horrendous. I know Tim Waddington said, it's only 70 pages, or whatever it was. Good luck, Tim. I'll see you next year. And then last year, we just didn't have the money to go. We had to sort of, restart ourselves really and pick ourselves up, getting ready for the season.
Yeah. I think another point about that with the devaluing bit, I guess my gut feeling is about it is like, does it hold the same prestige that it's from a big name breeder? Like, because
yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at some of these auctions, and I'm not going to mention farm names, some of the famous farm names, and I'm like, guys, I couldn't sell it for that, let alone buy it.
Yeah.
So no, I think the prestige of the farm names carries a hell of a lot.
From a hobbyist perspective, Joe, what I'll say, so I don't know, I've always thought this, is it because I'm getting more into the hobby, or is it because there's more of it? So when I think back to when I started, you would see the odd Dainichi certificate. I can't scroll on social media now for not seeing a dealer with loads of Dainichi auction fish.
Yeah.
Before,
that's
it would
what
be
I'm
quite
saying.
special.
All these new dealers have got access to all the auctions. So as before, I used to get up in the morning. Oh look, I've still got 35 highest bids. I get up in the morning, and I'm not joking you. I even put it on Facebook. I had a little thing up there, 99 notifications. That was 99 fish that I had been knocked off, and they weren't 10, 20,000 yen bids either. They were well upwards of that. 99 fish overnight knocked off. And don't forget, this is not just England. England's going through quite a boost, but there's, one of my friends used to tell me in every town in Holland, there's a dealer. And I mean every town. At the moment, if I leave, I'm basically Crawley, just outside of Crawley. If you go west, Reading-wise, there's a guy who works from home at Byfleet. Then there's nobody along that middle to the Cotswold. You go down to the coast, there's nobody except you've got to go right over to Chichester, Coy Hut. The other way, you've got to go right over to Hastings, to the guy, I can't remember his name, who does Ogata Koi. You can pass through 20 towns in England without there being a koi dealer. And that's before all the new koi dealers.
We
are expanding the same way as Holland and maybe Germany was.
And there's that funny line as well, isn't there, Gary? So down in the south, I've not visited you yet, Gary. I must pop up and see you. I'm right down in Hastings, so we got nothing. Like you say, the one you mentioned there. Yeah, so the one you mentioned for Gata, that's my local, Icklesham Koi. Even they've stopped using the Gata now because they was having problems. But we got nothing in the south, really, have we? Which is brilliant for dealers. You've got Koi Water Barn, obviously, there's Clear Water, there's Gary over the sort of the western side of London. But there really is very little down here.
Well, Ogata is a perfect example of so I don't know what has maybe shifted there, but I remember when I went in 2022 with Chris Masters, I remember we went to the open sale auction, and I think at the time we were the only Brits there. I know Brits have been visiting Ogata for a long time, so it may be just a coincidence, but it kind of felt like I kind of looked around. I was like, why are we the only British people here at Ogata's place at that period of time? I saw all these Belgians and all these Germans and all the French and all these people. I'm like, why are we the only British here? This does not make sense. But now you go and in the auctions, there's just a fleet now of people but they're not visiting, they're bidding on fish or buying fish through somebody to get the Ogata fish. And so for me, I'm I held a bit of magic in my heart because I felt like Chris had built his relationship with Ogata, and Chris had something unique with Ogata there at that moment in time. So I thought I was buying a piece of that story, whereas now it kind of feels like it's a bit more down to earth because anybody can go to any business. That's how it works. The way that it is if you want Ogata fish, you can buy them. You don't need Chris's relationship. That is the way of the world. Yeah. But I guess I held on to that piece of magic that I felt like it was do you know what I mean?
We've all done that. We've all done that. I remember a phone call from a very famous, I'm not going to name drop because he's not with us anymore, bless him. And he said to me, I made a comment about just something that happened in Japan and my feelings. And he said, you've taken off your rose-tinted koi glasses then, have you? You've seen the real industry. And it is a big shock. I mean, I went to Japan I had a Japanese guide. I went round with a Japanese guide a few years ago, just for different reasons. And we come out of Marahiro and he said to me, you understand Japanese people a lot more than a lot of Europeans. I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, I'm not saying you're the best dealer. He said, you're just your approach to the Japanese breeders. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, a lot of them run up to the breeders and they give them all cuddles and, oh, you're my favourite breeder and I know I'm your best customer and this, that and the other. And honestly, it does get a bit embarrassing. Again, I've seen things where I've just cringed. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm loud, I'm boisterous, and I know one breeder was actually scared of me and wasn't making appointments, would not make us an appointment. So in the end, someone went there. I stayed in the hotel without me. And he said, what's the problem with Gary? He said, he's just big and scares me. So he said, I wasn't in the hotel. I was in the car. He said, right, he's in the car. I'm going to go and tell him. He said, no, don't bring him in. So he said, Gary, you've got to shake his hand with a limp wrist, right? And just whisper, hello, how are you? From that day on, we've got on like a house on fire. But going back to Toro, what he said was, you understand that it is just business, isn't it, Gary? I said, it is. I said, sometimes there is a bit of relationship, but more so since the Asian market has really opened up. Personal relationships have suffered. And Toro said to me, he said, you understand it is just business. There's friendship in it. And then I was a bit disappointed because we've just coming out of Marahiro. And as he got in his car, he stopped and he said, but I will tell you something now. It's different in there. I can feel the warmth there. He said, there is a real friendship between you, Marahiro, and his wife. And I think even that's hard now because the last time I was in Japan, we couldn't get in to see Marahiro. We went in and there was a Sakai. What's going on here? What have I done here?
No, we're still with you, Gary.
Still see you.
No, oh, that's it. That's it. Better. Sorry, I couldn't only see one of you. Then I had a big biffy beard looking at me. Sorry, that's a bit off. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah,
But
last
no,
time I was in Marahiro, I think Sakai himself, Kentaro was in there. Kentaro-san was in there looking at broodstock. There was at least 6 other. Now, when I say parties, I mean parties, not 6 other people. And they were all 2, 3, 4, 5 strong. And I just looked in, and the guy from Ornafish, I used to go with Ornafish at the time, just shook his head. I waved to Marahiro. He came over, shook my hand, and he just said, "I'm very, very, very sorry, Gary," in English. Which was a bit of a surprise because I didn't think he could even speak my names. But that's, I'm hoping, we'll get round it. He might say, right, I'm harvesting the pond at 7 o'clock. Come round at 7 o'clock when I go this year. I don't know. But I've been told there's a lot of hardships out in Japan. The people who use their regular breeders and have got good relationships, they get on. But people like myself who have to go to 20, 25 different breeders in a week, the reports I were getting back from the agents was horrendous. Did you get on? And now that a normal harvest is now called an event. So it's called an event to get everybody in there. And I won't be doing it, Joe. I'm not going to go and get in a queue of 20 people to pick a straw, to pick one fish, and then wait while 19 other people, even if I get number 1, and this is how it is now in Japan. This is one of the reasons that I'm not that fussed about going, but I do want to go back this year. You pick number 1, got the first choice. You have to wait till 19 other people pick it, and then they come backwards to you. So you have to wait for 38, oh my arithmetic's gone, 38 fish before you can get your second fish. Not being funny, I'd rather go to a dealer, a breeder that people have picked through. And I've done it many times. Oh, they've come in and they've raked the place. And I'm like, oh, what about that Ginrin Showa? And what about that? That's nice. Give me a price on that. Nobody ever picks the best 10 fish in a pond because your personal preferences will always, always come into it. So you're always going to go to any breeder in the winter and find fish there.
So 2 things, Joe. So if we go back to Agata, so when I first got into the hobby, so I can't remember how many years ago, when I picked an Agata koi from my local dealer, someone said to me, I said, is this a good dealer? Is this a good breeder? Sorry, is this a good farm? And they said, Agata, well, it's a bit like Tesco's. They do a little bit of everything, but they don't really specialise in everything. Yet if we fast forward to 2025, we're now seeing Agata jumbo Tozai in very specific breeds. So they've obviously had quite a pivot in their business model, haven't they? They've obviously seen something very different. They're still doing their mass stuff, but we're definitely
I was
seeing...
shocked when I saw a 61 centimetre Nisai Budagromo for sale. I was like, what? When did they go jumbo? So he has, obviously, I think you're right, he has definitely concentrated. I know he still buys a lot of fish in, but I've been told he has now got a completely different, and I might be speaking out of turn, Joe, so put me right if I am. I believe he's got a completely separate fish house to put them in quarantining before they're mixed into batches for shipping.
There was stuff that from Niigata. He has like a Niigata house that he brings in some stuff from like Marasaka and stuff like that, I'm sure. But like I know with his Yamabuki and stuff at the time, he had Rio from Izumiya flying the eggs to Ogata, and then he was using some sperm, and it's just incredible, like to produce the fry. And it's just, I think it's one of them things where we've definitely seen a shift. I think the other thing as well, Gary, like the breeders, we talk about them in ways that like it's almost poetic or magic or whatever, but we talk about like the business relationship. There's a funny story you told me about Marahiro trying to put a fish in your bowl and you kept saying no. Do you want to tell people about that?
We was with Kevin Ellis. Some of you remember Kevin Ellis, very famous in the koi carp, in the koi angling world. In the carp angling world, and he did some tremendous videos. And we had him in Japan. The problem is when you're with Marahiro, you're just so relaxed. And at the time, we were virtually the only people he'd let hand select Tosai. So what he'd do, I'm not saying he'd net his pond. You'd go in there, there'd be a net with 250 fish. You can pick 50. Happily pegging away, selecting away. Kevin Ellis has got his video on. He never goes anywhere without a video. And we're putting these fish in the bowl. And Marahiro picks this up, says, very good, puts it in the bowl for me. I said, no, I don't like it. So I put it back in his bowl. This went on 4 times and I just scooped the fish up and flicked it back in the net. I said, that's only good for sushi. Don't do it again. And we started to laugh and I noticed that I was like, where's Kevin? So I've gone outside and Kevin's doing a video and he's just said, oh my God, he said, people talk about relationships in Japan. Gary and Marahiro are in there giggling away like a pair of kids. They're arguing over a fish, and Gary's just called it. It's only good for sushi and put it back in the. He said, I thought Marahiro would pull out a katana and cut his head off. He said, but they're in there giggling away like little kids. And I think, Joe, this goes back to something we touched on over the phone last weekend about the enjoyment in koi. It seems to be, don't get me wrong, there's a time for serious and there's a time for play acting and there's time for piss taking and time for laughing. But it seems to me now that some people aren't happy unless they're moaning, slagging someone off, and I think somewhere along the line, even this winter, because obviously we did have it hard, I think I even got into that mode. I didn't enjoy my and it wasn't till, I don't know, a Narita auction come along, and I think it was early in the autumn harvest, and I think people were ringing me up saying, why are these fish so cheap? I said, I don't know. I got 32 in one Narita auction. And someone rang me up and he said, well, I'm seeing all these videos of everybody in the harvest. You don't think they're all in the breeders and they forgot about the auction? I said, I'm not saying they forgot about it. Maybe they thought it was more important to select their own koi. And we had stuff like from Donichi, Marahiro, big jumbo this size, 50 cm plus, for like 395 and 495. And people were ringing me up going, well, what's wrong with them? I said, look, I just got them cheap. Nobody was bidding.
Yeah,
and, So what was we talking about? I've gone off on a tangent now. I forgot what I was saying.
Do we think the Brits have made Japan the new Benidorm? Have we all gone over there en masse? Is that what's happened? Have we
No.
The other
Sorry,
thing,
getting
actually,
back to about being about fun. Yes. Anyway, I did that auction. Sorry, and that kind of just sparked me back in, and I got into the season and everything else. But it just seems to be, I mean, I don't like to mention people, right? But there's a certain little crowd do their YouTube videos, do their auctions. One of them really does mess around, and I think sometimes it goes a little bit over the top. But at least they're having fun and they're enjoying themselves. And all you hear people doing is moan about this. I mean, I got some flack for coming on here tonight, Joe, as you probably know.
Yeah,
And
quite
someone put on
right
my
too.
Facebook, and someone put on my Facebook, come out of the dark side, go to the light side, Gary. Dimensions of that's why I was going to get the Darth Vader mask tonight. I couldn't get it, Joe. I did try, but this when I'm in Japan, I always have a really good time. You ever laugh? There's some breeders that are very reserved. When you go to a Fuji, it's not the time for jokes. They're very. Have you ever been there, Joe?
No, I've not.
Lovely family, best price fish in Nagata, best tangerines in the world. They come out with a bowl of tangerines. I think I went to grab one. There was me, Chris Edwards, someone else. I had a couple of customers with me. I had this great big bowl of tangerines. I'm doing all the photographs, and I've got to put my hand behind my back. Bloody hell, they've all gone, about 15 tangerines. But, you have to be really respectful out there, because if you piss them off, and I've seen people throw fish back in, got the ump over the price and everything, I just think, do you know what? You're a mug, because you're going to pay for that next time you go in there.
Yeah.
I had an incident with another breeder, not keen on me going in there, couldn't work it out. And we realised for 2 days I had a guy in my in our car, that wasn't anything to do with me. He had another 2 days and the other car was full up. Said, yeah, no problem. And he tipped a load of fish in at a certain breeder. And when we went back to them, and he said, what's the problem with Gary? He said, he's always tipping fish back in. And the guy said, that's not Gary. If he doesn't buy them, he won't tip them back in at bad temper. He said, oh, no, I remember. And we remembered back to that day. And when we went back to the breeder and told him, he went, yes, he was this guy from another country. He said, yes, he said, it wasn't part of Gary's party. He was just in the car because we were sharing it. And now we got on really well again. So the behaviour...
They do remember.
But you don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean you have to walk around with a serious, I remember another time when Kevin Ellis was with us, we picked up Shintaro from his house, or we'd gone to dinner. We brought him back, and I won't mention the name of the driver. There was a great big snowball outside Shintaro's thing, right in the middle of the road. So he said, watch this. He smashed into it. It wasn't snow, it was ice. It took the car off all four wheels. It was like something out of a Roadrunner movie, or this. It was just like wobbling around like on this central fulcrum. And we had Shintaro pushing it. Kevin Ellis was just laughing. He said, we come to Japan and we've got a top breeder like Shintaro pushing us out the shit. Oh, sorry, I said a rude word. Sorry.
Don't worry.
I
think we need to go to Japan with Gary. I think this sounds a bit more fun.
People learn to enjoy koi. It's fun. And I think too many people, and some dealers, I'm not just moaning at hobbyists, I think dealers are. Dealers are moaning about hobbyists, dealers are moaning about dealers. And sometimes I get a message, I need to speak to you. And I'm like, I know what that is. I don't want to pick the phone up. I don't want to be, because it does drag me down. And I got into the winter where I was getting in that mode. And I suddenly realised, I thought, no, that's a slippery road. I'm going to enjoy my koi, and I do now. I've got 2 ponds to knock down in the annex this year. I'm going to get stuck into them, rebuilding for the new season. And I'm just going to enjoy it more.
You've had some trials and tribulations, because wasn't it during the winter you had the gable end?
That wasn't enjoyment and that wasn't fun, I can promise you that. A builder went through an overhead cable and pulled out the whole of the back end of our building straight on the car. An hour later, me, Sue, my grandson or my son could have been getting in the car. So it wasn't tribulations, it was quite bloody serious. We're laughing about it now, but yeah, the car was nearly right off.
But speaking about like negativity, Gary, I mean, we have to kind of address it. I mean, the elephant in the room is with this podcast is that I think there is a select group of like senior dealers that listen to this. I mean, me and Dave have always been mystified by the amount of people in the trade that listen to this. It always seems that whoever I speak to, it's almost as though they do listen to find something they disagree about, to then have like possibly a bit of a moan behind the scenes about it. And I'm really delighted that you've come on today and had the discussion with us, Gary, because we're not always going to agree with things, and we've said this, but the intentions are always with this podcast is to make it good and to make it something that the hobbyists can enjoy and give real information to people. And if there is news in the industry, I do have to cover it, whether that's a new dealer or a new koi food, or they have to be covered on this podcast because it's news. And if somebody wants to come on, I'm not going to say no to anybody coming on here. It should be an open platform, and I can only just give my like 2 pence about it. But I'm just delighted that you've come on and done it. But it's almost the same that I've experienced with the podcast. Some of the negativity. It's not to say like Gatwick Koi's not had the same negativity thrown about by people in the trade, is it? As well, like you've got your fair share of people out there that I think will moan about you in the backgrounds as well. And like I've had the discussion with you about it, and I don't think it's fair at all, some of the criticism that you've had over the years, because you're honest.
Let's just pick up. You said an open forum. I'll be honest with you, Joe. I didn't want to come on. Don't want to do a podcast. Stuck in the mud.
Thanks,
I'm
Gary.
old-fashioned. Hold on. No. I'm going to be fair here. And we had that discussion. And the reason is, all I see is podcasts, is 2 or 3 people all agreeing on a subject. There's no right to reply. There's no one cross-questioning them. Mm-hmm. And I said this to you, and you said to me, Gary, you old guard, as we're being called, let's call ourselves what you old guard, you don't want to go with the podcast. You don't want to go. I have to take, because this is my livelihood, I have to take the people on the podcast that want to go. So I spoke to a couple of guys and I said, you know what, as I said to you, I'm going to take the Pepsi test and I'm going to go on there. No holds barred, no taboos. Let's get it out and let's discuss it. And the reason is, in defence of these dealers, including myself, maybe we are a little bit guarded, maybe we are a little bit too old-fashioned. But I said, I'm going to go on there. If you want anything asked or anything made, I will make a point of it. But someone needs to go on to give a like a right to reply. And I said, I'm going to do it. And that's why I'm here, Joe. We've spoke about some of the things that upset people. That guy, whoever it was, saying that new dealers are driving the price of good fish down. They're not. Good fish are in more demand now than ever. If anything, it's driving it up. There's a guy, I won't mention his name, he's a German guy. He works in association with the people we ship. You want to see the fish he picks. They are out of this world. And he keeps saying to me, Gary, can you send them out on your WhatsApp group? Now, before anyone says anything, it's a WhatsApp group. It's for dealers. This is the price. This is it. There's no discussion. There's nothing else. And it
Gary's auctioning koi.
No. It's not an auction group. It's literally offers selected fish from Japan. And I said to him, I'm sorry, mate, I will not be able to say. Please try. So I'll tell you what it was. Some very, very expensive Isa Tetesta. Put it up on the WhatsApp group. Within 30 seconds, it was gone. Oh. Please try another one, Gary. Gone. And these are people that I was really surprised buying them. And I don't mean that disrespectful. I couldn't buy them and sell them. I bought a box last year and I've still got 70% of them still in the shop. So what I'm saying is even the good fish that are really expensive are just selling. You know, the last couple of weeks, the guys in Niigata, we're not shipping anymore. We've got shipments next week. And that's for everything that was selected 2 weeks ago, because it takes 2 weeks to get a health certificate, not confirmation of room on the plane. So we've not bought anything for 2 weeks. And they were struggling then to find good fish. So there's no way good fish are coming down in price. The demand is too high.
I'm delighted to hear that as well, because I do agree with you. I think the standard of koi that the dealers are importing is of like a good level, and even if the auction culture in Japan is on a rise, the fish that are from these auctions are good koi. Like, they only certificate them because they genuinely believe this is something that they want to put their stamp on as a.
Yeah.
It's something their farmers produced and they're proud of it, so it gets a certificate, and I understand that. And I think the standard of fish that have been brought in is high, and I really hope that transitions into us having a really strong show scene, because that's another kettle of worms we won't open today. But the show scene needs new good fish being imported, 100%. And I mean, in terms of like the people that are importing koi, there is also like concerns from people about how they are being quarantined, which I know is a big part of your identity.
No, come on, just get out and say it. I can see what you want. You want to get it out of me. Ask me the question. Come on.
Do you have concerns about the amount of new dealers that are opening and what they are doing quarantining?
100%.
I can't believe you asked him that.
100%. Because I saw on Facebook, I don't want to give the details out because it would reflect badly on the guy. And I'm not, whatever anyone thinks of me, yeah, I do blow up, as you know, but I don't generally slag people off. But there was one, quite a big dealer, put on Facebook, this is the day his fish are coming in. Then he released the fish date 4 weeks later. And I'm like, you can't be heat ramping. And then I saw another dealer. This was really shocking. Just bought this, his exact words, I've just sourced this in Japan and it'll be available at my place to collect after quarantine in 4 weeks' time. Well, hold on a minute. 2 weeks for your health certificate. Maybe 12 days you can do it. Find a flight, 12 days. So your quarantine is 14, 15, 16 days.
Mm.
I'm sorry, but you can't even treat for parasites in 16 days. I know you can't. Don't worry about KHV and heat ramping, sleeping sickness. You just can't do it. And I'll tell you something, sleeping sickness is a real pain in the butt at the moment. A real pain in the butt.
Yeah. I know somebody who's dealing with sleeping sickness at the minute, and again, I won't mention it to him, but I want to talk to you because a lot of people have thrown jibes at you, Gary, for saying you mix too many fish. I don't agree with that. Personally, I've seen it in premises where mixing fish can be like a good thing as well for bringing out sleeping sickness and KHV, because mixing fish together is a form of stress and it brings out these things. And if you don't mix them and then they go to a hobbyist pond and then they mix, it's a bigger problem for you, isn't it?
Exactly that. CFAS and the Japanese breeders don't like the way I do business over here. Oh, but it leads to problems. And CFAS said, oh, we can't work out where it's come from. I said, don't care. It's not my job. Oh, yeah, but you should be helping us. I said, no, let me stop you. My job is to protect my customers, their pond and their fish from this shit that I've had 3 times over here. I said, that is all my interest is. Oh, hello. You've all gone back. You've come back. That's it. Back in the game. I don't know. I've got one here somewhere. I should just give the phone to my wife to hold, honestly. But that's it. And I was quite abrupt with CFAS, and he looked at me and he went, fair point. And I won't mention any names, but I got a phone call. Breeders aren't happy in Japan. You keep getting KHV. I said, well, it's a very simple answer. I said, what's that? Tell them to stop sending it to me. I promise you, that is word for word what I said. And the other person on the end of the phone went, well, they don't mean to. And I said, well, I don't mean to keep getting it either, but I have. And then he went, yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, he's trying not to laugh at something. No, it's, if koi dealing was healthy and as easy as it is, we'd all be millionaires. The days of making millions out of koi are well gone. I know 2 very, very famous people that made a lot of money in koi, and even they've said it. You'll never be rich dealing in koi. However, if you love koi, be a koi dealer, because you'll always earn a good living. And there's a big difference between earning a good living and making money or being rich. I'm sure your viewers don't need me to explain that. And I can honestly say there was times where, we were really on top and then bang, you get the KHV, and then you're back to the beginning. And it's not nice. Hence the video I put out last week, because I hated doing that video, because I know some people will go, oh, here he is banging the KHV drum. I'm not. I hate it. I don't want to see it again. I don't want to. What it did to me and my wife the 3 times. But people out there are still. Well, we know some dealers, as we all know now, are talking absolute rubbish and lying through their teeth. But some people just don't understand. When I put it up on YouTube, the amount of remarks, hi Gary, thank you very much for taking the time to explain. I'm now much more educated in KHV, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to start up the YouTube channel. Obviously, hopefully I can get a bit of retirement money out from when I'm really, really too old to lift 35 kilo boxes. But it is for education, because there is such a bad lack of education. And don't get me wrong, guys, I don't want loads of hate mail. There are some fantastic YouTubers out there, but there are also some dire ones.
Yeah.
I've had an argument with a guy. My big thing, the biggest enemy of the koi keeper is tap water. And I actually said that. You know, when you're talking and you're annoyed, I had an argument about someone. I was on the phone to Paula Reynolds. I said, I'll tell you what, Paula, I reckon tap water kills more. This is back when KHV was really rife in England. I reckon tap water kills more people than KHV. And you know, when you say it and you go, oh, God, what have I just said? And she just turned around on the phone, not turned around, she just picked up the phone. She said, do you know what, Gary? You're probably right. I said, do you think seriously? She said, well, yeah. She said there's a lot of people that just don't take it seriously. And I even had a guy who's a YouTuber say to me, I did a nice piece of thing about dechlorinators and metals for a friend of mine that runs a group. I thought, nobody's mentioned it for a long time. And someone actually come on and he said, very nice, Gary, very interesting, but I can tell you now, there is not one city in England that has water where heavy metals are so high that it will affect koi carp.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Fun enough, we had
I was
Finch.
gobsmacked, Dave. Honestly.
Yeah.
I said, are you serious? He said, no. So I pulled out a water report, and I think it was 15 parts per billion. And he said, well, I've got hard water. That is a little bit high, I would admit. I've got hard water, so it wouldn't worry me. And he was exactly right. So then I pulled out the big guns. There's a place just outside of Guildford called Hindhead, and it can't be a coincidence that I've only got one customer in the whole of Hindhead selling fish, get ulcers. He was getting them injected, they'd heal up, getting ulcers. So I was talking to, at the time, Anne Telford, and she said, I can get your water report done. And we come back, and oh my God, 50 parts per billion of copper.
Wow.
And 300 parts of iron. And the bloke didn't want to discuss it anymore. That was it.
Yep.
Didn't want to discuss it. And I had the water for it, and I put the water report. No, it wasn't Anne. Sorry, I've got it done. We've got our own lab now. So I actually put that in the conversation, and he just said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I was like, you can't. It's like the testing, the KHV testing. There's so many myths about testing. You know, if you want to answer the truth, phone Paula Reynolds. And I want to dispel this because Paula's a very good friend of mine. I had a guy in the shop that said, oh yeah, Paula Reynolds done well for a good turned fish health expert. I said, sorry. She was a hobbyist who turned fish expert, when she said, no, she's a doctor. She's got a doctorate who specialises. Her chosen subject specification is fish pathology. Yet you've got dealers out there that know more than her and CFAS put together. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. If you want to know about testing, ring up CFAS, ring up Paula Reynolds. And I'll tell you this now, Joe, unless there's been some scientific breakthrough that in the last 30 seconds that I don't know of, there is not a test in the world, right, that will pick up KHV in a healthy carrier fish which is not shedding the virus. Fact. That's an absolute fact. So all this gill swabbing and cutting out, don't get me wrong, Joe, it's great. It's got its place. You might get lucky. If you've got some fish that are shedding the virus and the fish haven't got sick, you might pick it up quickly with a gill swab. But if that fish is not going through the virus and shedding the virus, so it's in its healthy carrier state, you will never be able to find it on a test.
Yeah.
That is why CFAS hate it so much. And also why one of the biggest shippers in the world has stopped testing.
I think just before we go in, Joe, so being down in the southeast, Gary, we had Vinchy, didn't we, on the podcast a little while back. My first 2 years of koi keeping were plagued, and it was, when I look back now, it was down to my tap water. And like you say, when I got my report and I sent it to Andy, he went through all the things. Actually, what's the maximum allowance before it affects koi? And you know, not to distrust him, I went away and Googled these things, and he's an expert. He's 100% right. And yeah, the amount of metals in my water that were way beyond where they start to or begin to affect koi, and it completely changed the game for me. And it was the ulcers. Nothing would ever heal. When it did heal, it would come back.
Sure sign of metals.
Yeah.
Absolute sure sign of metals. Copper and iron. And what it was explained to me, I'm not a scientist, but I have to try and relate it in the way I can understand it. It's exponential. So if you've got copper, that's bad. You've got iron, it's not twice as bad. It's 2 times 3, 4 times as bad. So the combination of both of them together is horrendous. And this guy actually said to me, I'm sorry, I don't believe anyone had 300 parts per iron, because it's near to the human drinking level, which again, if I say this and I've got it wrong, I believe is 350. Well, we had a guy we did a test for, he had 150 parts of iron. And he didn't believe it. He said, this is 2 weeks. By the time I got it, I want another one done. So we did it again, went up to 730. So at the time, I was working very closely with Anne Telford. I said, what's going on there? She said, he's got an old Victorian iron watermark somewhere along his road, and it's literally rust, falling into the water. And they had to issue an emergency no drinking the tap water. It was double the human level. So you imagine, this is before he put koi in his pond. Can you imagine if he put koi in there? It would have been horrendous.
Game over. Yeah, it's interesting.
You've got a well-known YouTuber saying that I'm wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's interesting. My wife suffers with like rosacea, and I googled it, and that can be tap water related. And I remember whenever I go to Japan, getting a shower and bath in Japan, I come back and my skin just feels like completely different. My hair feels different. My skin feels different. Just everything. And then I remember I get in the shower. I know it sounds stupid. Your hair's wet, and you feel your hair, and you go, it feels like rubber. And whereas, like, when you get a shower in Japan, your hair feels like totally different. It's ridiculous. And I think it's about time, like, some of these bloody water companies start getting the fines that they're supposed to be getting, because it's ridiculous.
Right, no, I'll stop you there, because that's not true. We get a lot of this with customers. I'm going to get onto the water board. The water board do not supply you water at the quality to keep healthy koi in. They supply it. No, but this is a fact.
It's true.
They supply it to human levels.
But how can it be so poor?
If it does go over the human levels, they act fast, because they will get fined. I mean, I think within 24 hours they'd informed all the people in this guy's, and it was a private road, so that's why the metal goes up a private road. It's not designated as the water board's fault, but because they're supplying the water, something like that anyway, they did warn all the households not to drink the.
Yeah, I Southern Water. I've always criticised Southern Water, and I've got a lead service. And I had that bit of a cock up, didn't I, the other week, Joe, where I tested water coming out of my big blue, and because ammonia had been sat in it, when I was testing the water the other side, it had nitrite. So I was thinking to myself, I'd done the test before the big blue, and I hadn't. So I sent a message to Southern Water, a shitty message, and said, I'm not happy, there's nitrite in my... Literally, within 24 hours, they'd rung me. And then within a couple of days, they were around my house doing tests. And out of that, they're replacing my lead service from the road, 17 metres. They're replacing the whole thing for me. Yeah, I can't.
You probably find your lead was probably encroaching on human levels, acceptable levels.
Yeah, so they're coming straight out, and I really can't fault them. I think the other thing as well, people would get a test report. If you tested your water 30 times a day, it would be different every time. So when we test water at work, so we have to test water at work, and subject to what's happened, you might have a leak 2 miles away, something might have happened, something might have moved at the reservoir might be running low, so they've had to pour water in from somewhere else. It can change several times throughout a
day. Yeah. Well, we had a customer in the shop today, and I reminded him someone was talking about chlorine and chloramine, and he got me round there. He's got 9,000 gallons, but his drums and his moving beds in the shower and some other, I can't remember what other filter he had now, but it was so overspec'd, it was unbelievable. He said, Gary, I've had this running 6 months and I'm getting ammonia. I said, you getting any nitrate? He said, no. I said, it's not your bacteria then, because the first to go is your nitrate, as you know, nitrifying bacteria not nitrifying. The nitrate, if I get the words wrong, I know I'll get loads of people saying I don't know what I'm talking about. the bacteria that convert the nitrite are not as hardy as the ammonia bacteria. So to get ammonia in a system that's set up and with no nitrite, it was really weird. And I couldn't get my head around it. I said, well, there's something must have changed in here. And he said, well, the only thing is, last week, about the same time as the trouble started, I got a letter saying that the reservoir's too low in East Grinstead. They're pumping the water up from Lewis, which is about 15 miles down the road. I said, I know what this is. He said, what? I said, you got chloramine in your water. He said, how do you know that? I said, because your filters, you use dechlor, don't you? Yeah, all the time. I said, get me a bucket of your pond water. And he measured it with a Hanna, 0.1 ammonia or 0.001, I can't remember whatever it was. I put a capful of dechlorinator in a bucket and it went up to 3 or 0.003, whatever it was, straight away within 5 minutes. And I said, that's chloramine in your pond. And when you put the dechlorinator in, it's breaking down the bonds between chlorine and ammonia and releasing free ammonia. I said, that's why you're getting it. So anyway, he just lives with that 0.01 when he dechlorinates.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Well, quickly before we sign off, on the whole,
I thought we were here for an hour.
We've already done an hour.
You're joking,
an hour and 5. Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun.
It's been a nice natter.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Any provocative subjects yet? I was just getting.
Can I just actually touching back on something you mentioned earlier? So we were talking about actually people coming on to disagree or to agree, whatever, but to challenge, because they should have healthy challenge. But the funny thing is for all this podcast stuff, Joe, Si, and myself, we're in a Telegram group, aren't we? And we often disagree, don't we? We don't always agree.
Oh, no.
All three of us are very, very different.
But that doesn't come over on the podcast, though, does it?
No.
I mean, Joe's a koi snob and doesn't like male koi, and we quite often, don't we? We disagree about male koi, female.
You call
koi.
me sexist because I'm not into male fish.
Well, I'll tell you something, mate. I've just been out in the annex and I've just seen a Momotaro male that I bought in the auction as male last year. I thought, well, that's got a saucy body for a male. It went out to the mud ponds. And my God, it's a brute. I'll tell you something, Joe. You'll struggle to have a body as good as this side.
Really?
It's a monster. Yeah, it really is.
Joe.
The thing is, yeah, Joe. That's it. I'm starting to giggle now. I'm starting to relax. You see, I'm just getting in my pace now, Joe, and you want to stop it. But the thing is with males now, they are getting more and more desirable because a lot of people who don't show are saying, do you know what? I don't want females, egg problems and this problem and spawning problems. I'm quite happy to have a pond full of males. And when you actually meet someone who's doing it and you look in the pond, the only real giveaway is the big old flappers, the big pet. Oh, God, that sounds terrible. The
big old flappers.
Sorry, ladies and gents. The big pecks. It's the only giveaway that some of these fish are males.
It's the price tag for me. I can't afford big female koi, so I go with the male koi because I can get a bit more for my money.
The only problem is now that the Japanese have realised that. So now really good males are commanding good prices as well.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
I sold someone a male Nisai last year for 1,200 quid. And the customer in the shop was horrified. He said, you could get a good female for that. I said, listen, mate, if this was female, it would be treble the price. And the customer who was buying it just nodded and laughed. Seriously, people haven't got a lot of understanding about price. They think they have, but they don't. If you've got a really good male, it can command a good price.
Where do you stand, Gary, on what we're seeing with these bleeding 50 cm Tosai?
I don't know. I mixed. It's fantastic and it's incredible biology. And the brood stock he's gone through to get it. I really, really get it. But I was always worried, and I'm always worried that if a fish, and this is not a fact, this is the theory according to Gary Smith, is the fish growing too quick for its own biology? And that's only something that I've got a concern about. If someone like, oh God, what's his name? Momotaro, who's one of the breeders you're talking about, that guy has now got 75 cm Nisai. Now, whether you agree or you think there's a bit of what I was saying, that is an incredible thing. But his Karashigoi that he's bred into that, it might be 10 years old. So that kind of wipes the floor with my argument. But that's the only thing. Now, the only other thing is, I'll tell you another funny story. Another bloke who's not in the trade, he's still alive, Jeff Kemp from Connoisseur Koi. I remember he visited NND. And NND, this is going back to the years where a good sized Nisai was 35 to 40 cm. Wow, that's massive. And NND were one of the first in Nagata to get these like 50 cm Nisai. And I know for some of you watching this video, you're going to go, what's he talking about? All Nisai are 50 cm. They weren't, the old man. They weren't, and we're still buying from dealers who Nisai are 40 cm, but they still grow, but they just take longer to get there. And Jeff said, well, how much are they? And the NND guy gave him the price. He said, but that's the Sansai price. Yes, but in this size, Sansai price. He went, yeah, but I want this eye, the old price. Oh, you have to buy Tosai now. He said, so we're paying more for the same age fish. It was kind of a revelation when he actually mentioned the prices. And I was like, yeah, I get that, Jeff. It did make me chuckle. Yeah, I mean, it's technology. It's the modern world. It's the way forward.
Food.
I mean, these guys are no fools. They know what they're doing. You know, they know what they're doing.
It feels more to me like it's a bit more like a sport to them to see how far they can push the boundaries rather than... Like, I messaged somebody in Japan, like a breeder who I'd say I'm good friends with. And I said, like, is it good? Like, is it good for the health? And he said, like, it's absolutely not. Like, if they're wanting to raise, like, the next grand champion, I don't think it's something they would do, like, if that's what the aim is. If their aim is to make something that's marketable and it's going to sell, I think that's what they're probably trying to go for. And it feels more like maybe it's obviously impressive. I don't want to make it out like I'm not impressed by it. It's very impressive, but it does feel like a little bit gimmicky to me and not something I'd personally spend my own money on.
You know what we are, don't you, now, in this hobby, in this industry? Do you remember you used to go... Yeah, do you remember you used to go to the village fete and there would be people there growing giant cauliflower and giant cabbages and big carrots? It's just shifted. It's now the koi industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
People are looking at us from the outside going, the state of that.
I do remember when all these 50 plus centimetre Nisai started up, there were breeders that were worried. Oh, it's too big for a Nisai. It's too big. You know, I can grow them that big, but I don't want to. And so there was a bit to that. But now, I mean, you look at Marahiro. When I used to go there, 42 centimetres was massive for a Nisai. His Nisai now 50, 45, 60. But Marahiro, whatever you hear me say about him, and everybody thinks he's a little bit of a Japanese version of myself, a bit of a clown, a bit of a lad. So there is a saying that a man walks a fine balance between high intelligence and insanity. And believe it, Marahiro walks that line very finely. But no, seriously, he's a genius because he comes over as that acting, not the fool, not the clown. That's too harsh. Acting like, you know, the happy chappy, happy-go-lucky, a bit like myself. But you can walk in there and pick out a 60 centimetre Nisai for X amount, 100,000 yen, or you can go in the cheap ponds and buy 30, 35, 40 cm for a fraction of the price. So he knows, he's understanding, and I think his way is looking at it that people like Dainichi, Momotaro, they're losing that business, so I'll have it. You know, Kase, 30, 35, 40 cm. Shinoda, say that. Shinoda's are going 45, 50 cm now. I've just bought some Ginrin Showa from him, and one of them was touching 50 cm, a 50 cm Nisai. So they can all do it. It's whether they choose to do it or not.
The thing with Marahiro is that I never know when to take him seriously and when to not. Because I asked him, like, who was the first to do Kiyotsuri? Like, genuinely. Because obviously it's him, you've got Otsuka, and one other I can't remember the name of all the time. Marisa.
His brother.
Yeah, and I asked him who was first, and he came close to me and whispered. He was like, "It was me." And then I thought to myself, do I take that with a pinch of salt? Do I actually put that in my magazine? Because I can't take it as though he's just taking credit for something he hasn't done, or if it's actually genuinely him. But
just quote him on it.
Yeah, just quote him.
Get out of jail free card then.
The other thing is that round pond, there's a rumour that I was told that used to be a bathtub owned by the Yakuza. And I asked him, I said, was it? And he kind of ummed and ahed about it. And he told me right at the end, he's like, yes, it was. And I was like, well, do I actually take his word on that?
Well, I'll tell you something, that there could be some truth in that, because I don't know if you know, but the Yakuza are all fully tattooed.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to go in the majority of baths and springs with tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the exact percentage, but it is more or less all of them. So if they want to get together, and they've all got, obviously, they're all very wealthy guys, they want to go and have a bath and a pool somewhere, why not? It's plausible.
That building is not like a high-end bath resort, is it? It's not like, it would make sense to me that they build a baths there for the Yakuza. It's just where it's located and stuff.
I can't remember what building was there before Marahiro took it over, so I couldn't.
I can't remember.
Why
But
you
I'll tell you
two?
one
Why
thing that
you
makes me
two?
laugh. Nobody
Why
can
you?
say, no, sorry, Dave, nobody
No,
can say the word Marahiro without starting to smile or laugh. Look, you're
Yeah.
chuckling, I'm chuckling.
I'm going to drop out because I've got to go and do the dogs. But Gary,
Okay, nice
thank
to
you
see you,
so
okay?
much. I will pop up and see you, buddy. It'd be
Yeah,
good.
you're always welcome, mate. Kettle's always on.
Yeah, because Stuart from Surrey Coy pops down to see you, doesn't he?
Not anymore. He's now up in Nottingham Coy now, isn't he? He lives up in Derbyshire or
I'll
Nottingham
drop
or
him,
somewhere like
drop him a
that.
message. I'll say you
Yeah.
got to pop back down see Gary.
Our
But yeah,
man in Nottingham who's from Surrey.
yeah. Thank you ever so much,
Thanks,
guys. I'll
Dave.
see you later on.
All right, Dave. See you later, mate.
Bye.
But no, I can honestly say some of the best trips in the time I was spending at Marahiro Farm. I mean, the best when he was the best before he got well known. I don't know if you know, but you know, as you go into Marusi, there's a little what looks like an abandoned shed on the right hand side.
Yeah.
That still is Marahiro's fish house. That was his
All
main
right.
sales fish house, yeah.
Well,
And I remember we were in there once. I had this beautiful 35 cm Ginrin Tancho. It was stunning. In fact, I think it went to Wales and won baby champion, I think. But anyway, his wife took it away in a sock and she slipped in. And she's half in up to one leg. She's done the splits. Her other leg's gone through the scaffolding that you used to have. She's got one hand on the scaffolding holding her up, and the other hand. And I said, "Look, the Tancho's going to get away." Hinori's saying, and he rushed over, right? And he rushed over, and I'm not lying to you. He grabbed the sock off her, carefully placed the fish back, and then went back to help his wife out the pond. I was like, me and Chris were falling about laughing. And another time I went in there, Chris couldn't go. Very, very sad story about his daughter. She's on the road to recovery now. But he had to cancel going to Japan, and I'd got my flight and everything. He said, "Oh, don't worry, Rob will take you." And I get on famously, Rob. We work together now as well. So he walked into Marahiro, and I can talk prices because you don't know what was in the bowl. But Rob stopped. He said, "I think he's busy." He said, "I think he's doing a shipment." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "He's got a 1.5 metre bowl up there. He's filling up with water when we walked in." I said, "No, he ain't getting ready for shipping." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Just watch him." And he went, he pointed in the pond. I said, "Go on then." And he started getting out all these fish. And Rob's going, what the hell's going on? This is not the way to do business. I said, "It is with him." And I looked in. "What's that? Is that a smale?" "Yes, get it out." "What's this? What's that?" "Get it out." Three more went in. This, that in, that come in, that come in. So we're sitting there now, and we had all these fish, and Rob said, "This is really alien strain." I said, "This is Marahiro, mate. This is the way we do." So Rob said, he said, "Right, do you want to take all?" I said, "Yeah." He said, 1.2 million.
mhm.
I said, "Tell him bollocks." He said, "What?" I said, "Tell him no. Swear at him and say no." So he did. And Marahiro walked off and he said, "Gary, I know you're good friends with him. You've pushed this and I feel really embarrassed." I said, "Just wait a minute." Marahiro come back with two chairs, put one either side of the bowl, lit a fag up, took a big joke, and then come back with a counter offer. I said, "No, this is it and this is it." And Rob's going, "No, I can't." I said, "Just offer him it." This went on for about 20 minutes. Marahiro's laughing, I'm chuckling. And then Marahiro said, "Oh, go on then. I want to go and get some lunch." And I said, "Come on, I'll buy you lunch." And Rob was just speechless. He said, "This is not how we do it in Niigata." He said, "You're not going to be like this to all the other breeders." I said, "Oh, God, heaven forbid, no." But he's
It's
just,
the relationship you've got with him, innit?
with me and him, yeah, and there are a few other people he gets on with. I mean, to tell you how it was, I got a phone call from Japan. It was Tim Waddington. I said, "What are you doing in Japan? You're ringing me." And he went, "For Christ's sake, get on a plane, come over and see Marahiro and his wife. I'm sick and tired. Every time I bring my customers here, they ask how you are." So yeah, I would say that's, don't get me wrong, I love all the breeders, but I would say with Marahiro, yeah, there is a bit of a friendship. But even I have to be careful because he is such a good salesman.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember we went in there, we went for a cup of coffee. I was just on my way to the train station and I said, "It's my last day." He said, "Oh, come by for a cup of coffee." I said, "All right." He said, "Oh, what do you need?" I said, "Nothing. I'm all spent out." And he said something and walked off, and Chris started laughing. I said, "What did he say?" He said, "Well, it was the Japanese of, we'll effing see about that, Gary-san." We ran down there, whole bowl of Tanchos. Ginrin Tancho Stanky, Tancho Shower. And he's laughing. And he said something in Japanese. And I said, "What does he say, Chris?" He said, "Have you really finished?" I said, "No, go on then. Another hour, another 5 boxes." So you have to be careful with him. He's a bit of a bugger. He's a serious salesman.
Yeah,
But a lot of people don't realise who he actually is. He's the younger son of Sacho-san of Hirasawa Koi Farm. When
yeah.
Sacho retired, they bought. I don't know if they bought him, but he took on a little place opposite the cement works, which is still called to this day Hirasawa. But the main farm, the older son, changed the name to Marasei Koi Farm.
Right. Okay.
Marahiro didn't really want to work under his brother because it's still a bit feudal in Japan. The older son basically cops everything.
Gets everything. Yeah.
At Yogenji, it works very well because they're really good close brothers, and I think they share it. Maybe he's the owner in title, but they share all the work. I think Marahiro didn't fancy working for his older brother, so he went off and started Marahiro Koi Farm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice story, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I've really enjoyed that chat. One of the last things I want to just touch on. We have touched on it a little bit, but obviously, people. I think you are leading the way with the discussions we have had, and we've just had such a positive chat. I don't want to bring it down talking about bloody
But you're going to, aren't you?
KHV again. Like, it shouldn't be that every time I speak to Gary, it's going to be about KHV. We'll do another one of these, and we'll not mention the K word throughout. Yeah. But why do you think like heat ramping is so important? Because there are people out there that are, quote unquote, they would. What's the other word I've heard people using? Where incubating. Where they keep them high for long periods of time. Why do you think heat ramping is so important?
Well, they are doing a form of heat ramping. They are doing a form of anyone who brings fish in at 18 to 18 degrees. We generally set our tanks at 18, 20 in the warmer months for Tosai. We leave them for 5 days, then we take them up slowly to 25 degrees, hold them there for 14 days. That's a heat ramp. Anybody, even if you only did that, is quite clever.
Yeah,
and I mean that, and I'm not being derogatory, because if you think we're out of the KHV Woods game, we all know there was a breeder had it last year. I had it the year before. And the odds now are so... I mean, CFAS just said to me, he said, good grief. He said, when we said, there's another Archback at KV, someone said, who is it this time? He said, Gatwick. And he said they all groaned and said, not Gary and Sue. Poor old Gary and Sue. And it is. It's like lightning don't strike. The third time we got it, I'd learnt my lessons about stocking levels and mixing different things. So we still got hit for, a good bit of money, but it was manageable. But the second time, my God, if I told you how much it would be, I mean, it was more than most breeders turn over in a year, twice.
Yeah,
Not big shocks, but I mean, anyone working from home, it was horrendous. And one of the reasons I got into it, I felt so strong. I'll tell you a very quick story. There was a guy from the Worthing Club that we supplied a lot of fish to. Suddenly, we had a bit of a fallout. He went off and bought a fish somewhere else. And I'm going to be honest, I was a bit put out. We'd really looked after him. And suddenly, his fish are in a trouble. And the guy who took him to the other dealers rung me. And he said, look, he's having real trouble. We're injecting the fish and they're getting worse and ill. He's lost half a dozen. So I said, right, okay, we've had a fallout. He said, yeah, I know. He wants to ring you. I said, I'll tell you what, this is brilliant. I left my jumper down there when I was last down there. I'll ring him up. Hello, mate. I don't suppose... He said, hello, Gary. Yeah, I'm lovely. How are you, mate? I don't suppose I left the jumper. Yeah, it's washed and ironed and all folded up in the kitchen waiting for the Worthing Club meeting. I was going to take it. So I said, you all right? And he went, well, no, not really. Long story short, I went down there. And as soon as I saw it, I knew it was KHV. All the signs that I'd been told. The first time I ever saw it. And this might have even been before the shop, 23 years ago. Yes, it was. Yes, because we didn't have the forge then. So it was 15, 20, 25 years ago. And I saw that man destroyed. He was a pensioner. He was doing all right, but he'd spent a fortune on fish. Now, although I've said there's no test that will tell you something, Paula Reynolds was doing tests on something called a Western Era test, and it was the next generation testing. And I don't know if it could ever test a healthy carrier, but it could tell you more about the fish. And she said, yeah, it's all the new fish have given the pond KHV. I said, hold on, Paula, you what? Yeah, all the new fish. And then a little voice in the background, no, you daft cow, it's all the old fish. That's Paula's husband. And if you don't know him, that he's such a card. He really is. He has me in hysterics. He said, no, it was the old fish, all the dark, horrible fish. So anyway, I went back to him and he said, yeah, I bought them from an aquatic centre. It doesn't matter now because they're not there anymore. And I bought half the pond. And I said, well, Paula reckons that the old darker fish, which they all are, and a lot of them have survived, and all mine had gone, are the carriers, because this Western Area test could say, I think it could measure the level of carrier, what do you call it when you're ill? Antibodies. It could measure the level of antibodies or say whether these were new antibodies or old antibodies in the fish. So anyway, it's a little bit above my pay grade. So basically, fish that he bought from this collection. So I decided then and then that I never wanted to see a customer go through this again. So I played Paula Reynolds, and you can ring her up and ask her. And after about 6 to 8 months, she said, Gary, stop. She said, there is no more I can teach you unless you want to go down to biomolecular, nuclear, whatever it was, cell construction and stuff like that. She said, and I think that's a bit above your pay grade. It's one of my favourite things. And I said, lovely, Paula, thanks very much. I'm going to build a new quarantine, hence the forge and the annex and everything else come from that. But an interesting story about KHV, Paula Reynolds always says, all roads lead to Rome. It's her favourite expression. And a year later, I get a call out from a friend, my uncle's fish are dying. Can you pop round there? So we pop round there, and I cannot catch a fish. This fish pond is 20 metres wide by 30 metres long. I was warned. I've gone down there. I've had to sell them the nets because obviously I don't want to bring them back here. 2 4-metre poles plus the net. So they were 4.5 meters 5, and we could not catch a fish. So in the end, I said, look, I'm sorry, this is an hour now. We're not going to catch anything. And he just said, what about that one? The fish that we've been chasing, healthy, swimming around, was now on its side gasping. So I picked it up, brought it in, scraped it. I said, it's got flukes, but I opened the gills. Oh my God, it was there. The white, it looks like someone's dropped with a pipette a bit of bleach and it just goes out like a star. And I looked, it had the sunken eyes, I had the notch. And I said, I'm really sorry, but you've got KHV. I said, it needs to be tested, which we did, and it was. And the wife went nuts. Oh, no. She said, right, I'm suing this other well-known aquatic centre. They've given it to me. I said, well, do their fish die every year? She said, every time I buy 40 new fish to put in this pond, it was a massive pond, it will take it, little toe size, they all die. It's their fault. I said, no, actually, it sounds like your fish that you've got from a long time ago are the hosts. How dare you say my fish have brought this disease? Well, I'm going to sue them. I'm going to sue that. So I had to sit down slowly and explain everything about the new fish dying are the ones. She said, yeah, they'd be fine for a month or two, then it'd warm up, and then suddenly they'd all die. And I said, this is, you have to, because what you got to understand is you're laughing, Joe, because me and you understand. No, I'm not criticising you. We're laughing because it's bread and butter knowledge to me and you and a lot of other dealers and a lot of other hobbyists. But when you meet someone that really doesn't understand it, you have to sit down and say, calm down, put the kettle on, and we'll have a coffee and let's all start again. So she's chatting away. So I said, look, I know you don't completely agree with me, but where did your original fish come from? She said, I was in an aquatic centre and there was an old guy there from Worthing and they had a whole collection of fish that they were selling. He bought half and I bought half.
Oh my word, it's the other half.
You got it. I said, was his name so-and-so? And he goes fishing a lot. She said, yeah, that's him, nice old fella. I said, yeah, he got KHV a year ago.
Oh my
So
God.
they both bought these fish. And this is what people realise. This is really bad because the biggest spreader in hobbyist ponds is still second-hand fish collections. And that's a fact. You know, there's no... I don't really want to say this, Joe, because I don't want to make out that I'm some sort of godsend when it comes to KHV. But a lot of customers and a lot of other dealers have said, how comes you've got it 3 times and other people haven't? And as you know, a couple of people have said it's where you go buying your fish from, Gary. Well, you know, I know that you go to the exact 8 breeders that I had in that pond. So you're either lying or don't even know what you're saying. But that's by the by. So it's really, you know, when you see the heartbreak, and now I've seen it myself and obviously my wife, and I remember a funny, it's not a funny story, but we were putting all the fish down. I was just about controlling myself. The last fish we had to put down was an 8 centimetre jaguar, and it was for Sue's present. I sold the other one, and she just broke down. A car pulls up, man jumps out, and it's one of my scooterist mates. Now, we've all got a tough guy friend. This guy is iron. You know, he's like a hammer. He's a right hard case, hard personality. You know, he's been around the block. He's had a few punch-ups, and he said, "Oh, I've just come to give you a bit of moral support." I said, "Cheers, mate. I really need it. I'm fighting here. Go and give Sue a cuddle." So he said, "Well, where's all the dead ones?" I said, "In that bin." He said, "Oh my God, that's a big bin." And he leant in, and it was half full. And he froze. He couldn't move, and he turned round, and he had tears running down his face. I said, "Oh, fat God, not good you are. Go on, back off home." And he rang me, he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "But I just wasn't expecting that." And when all these people say, "Oh, Gary bangs on about it," I don't. I've not mentioned it for years publicly or anything since the last outbreak. But because these things have been said by hobbyists and dealers alike, I put that video out specifically not to have a go. I actually deleted a message because a dealer got named on my YouTube video. I'm not into that slagging off dealers. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't like the bloke.
It's not about that, is it?
I don't want to be anywhere near him in the nearest future, but I don't also want him slagged off on a YouTube channel. I could have left it on there. Someone else said, "Oh, hold on, that's a bit harsh," and I thought, "No, I'm not having that," and I deleted it. So I've got no axe to grind. I'm not happy, but I've not got no axe to grind.
No.
I just want people to try and understand more about what happened. We didn't have KHV 3 times. We triggered it in a quarantine, purposely built to do that.
Yeah.
And
It's changing the rhetoric, that
Yeah.
boring old rhetoric that you've caught it, and people need to like understand that the only reason you've got it is, like you've said, is because it's being given to you by Japan.
Yeah.
That's the be all and end all of it, and you've done the thing that you needed to do, which was catch it, and you've done it. So, and the other thing is.
Just getting back to the testing. Sorry, I don't apologise. Sorry, I apologise, mate. But getting back to the testing, and this is why I get so furious when people say testing. I listened to someone, and it was a bad mistake. I had a lot of respect for the guy, so I listened to him. And he said, "You're mixing too many 2-year-olds with 3-year-olds. You're going to get damaged." So I thought, you've done your fisheries course. I listened to him, and I put Chogoro fish in 2 of my biggest ponds, split the Nisai and the Sanzai up. And when it broke out in the first one, it wasn't fast, so I didn't get it was KHV. And then suddenly in the Sanzai pond, I lost an Afuchi Sanzai. Now you don't lose, whatever people says about his quality, his fish are bulletproof. I mean, seriously, you would really need an AK-57 to kill an Afuchi fish. One died, and I thought, whoa, that is, you might lose a Nisai occasionally every 5 years, but a Sanzai, so I was really pissed. Oh, sorry again. I was really unhappy. And then the next day, another one died. And then another one. And then someone else's fish died. And I said to Sue, right, we scraped them. Got Costia. Right, so we Albrexed it. And then the next day, I opened the door because it was a sealed unit. And the smell come out. And she looked at me and she said, "It's not." I said, "Yeah, I think this is KHV." So we called in CFAS. They turned up I've got to say one thing about this. CFAS come under a lot of flack, right? But I'll tell you something, mate. They do their job to the best of their ability. And unfortunately, all the governments, the Tory, Labour and everything, are all pulling funds away from CFAS. And they're doing a bloody good job under bloody hard circumstances. But anyway, he turned up. He's got his white coat on. He's sampling the fish, cutting out the gills, obviously, to go off to testing. And he looked at him and he said, "I think 70% chance this is KHV." I said, "I think it's more like 95." And he said, "Yeah, you might be right." The phone rings. "Gary-san, it's me." "Oh, hello, how are you?" "Very sorry to tell you the news. You were right. Chogoro has got KHV. Was just tested positive." I said, "I've been telling you that for 7 days." 7 days, they were testing his fish and nothing showed up. They were saying, "Please stop saying that it's him." I said, "I'm telling you now, it's him. He's the only person I've got fish in both these ponds, and the fish are dying, and I haven't had one of his die yet." So anyway, it turned out, and they've been PCR testing for 6 days, didn't find anything. I think also there was a complaint from someone else around the world, so they went back, started testing. Then poor old, I won't mention his name, another dealer who does heat ramp, he copped it, he got onto him, so they did another round of testing, and then it come back. And all that time, me and him were losing fish, and someone else in Asia was. But the breeder was testing negative. That's why I've got no faith in tests.
No, I understand that. It's a good place for us to end. I feel like we could go on for another 2 or 3 hours. So
I think part 2 straight away, Joe, and I'm right up for it. Seriously,
yeah.
We've covered. We haven't really gone into the territories. I was a bit worried that you were going to go diving into the everything. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm more than happy to discuss. I don't want to get involved in slagging matches and slagging other people or whatever they do.
Well,
whatever they sell. Good luck to them. It's not my business. I'm just more worried about Gatwick. My business.
I really hope that people will appreciate you coming on, and I think if you're in the market for some fish, and give Gary a ring. It's nice for you to come on here, and I hope that you feel the benefits of coming on here as well. I hope that people will get in touch with you to get some fish, because I do think for those dealers that do sit sit away from being front facing and being on things like this, there is an opportunity to come on here and also make a name for yourself again. I'm not trying to say Gary Gatwick needs more customers, but there is this new generation
Always
of
need
people.
more customers.
No, but you know what I mean. You don't need the business, but I do think there's a new generation of people like me that will hopefully get in touch with Gary and tell him you've enjoyed this podcast and convince him to come on again. Don't sound like he needs it.
I'll be honest with you. I've enjoyed it. It was much more friendlier than I thought, and much more. But I think we got through a few subjects, but there's a hell of a lot more we could do as well. So yeah, I'm happy, Joe, and good luck to you, mate.
I guess I'm not as scary as I look.
No, you got to worry about that. If I could tell you all the things I planned tonight, unfortunately, someone let me down. It's not a well-known fact, but I've got an older son who's a boxer. And when I saw your advert with the boxing glove on, I thought, I'm going to go one further. And I was just going to come on with the boxing headgear on and the gloves and say, come on in, Joe, give it your best shot. But unfortunately, my son blew me out and he didn't bring them round.
Don't worry, there's always next time.
So all right, mate. It to the koi perspective, putting the fun back into koi.
Yeah, I'll put that as the title with Gary Gatwick.
All right, then,
mate. All right, mate.
Care.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.